You know, I don't watch much TV, but I like the commercials. I think we can learn a lot about our own lives through advertisements, like this recent one from Applebee's. In real life, people aren't meeting new people at Applebee's. In real life, many people at Applebee's are sitting down, looking at their phones, if only to see how many other people recommended the hot shot whiskey chicken. How many people drove here today? And what did you do when you hit a red light? Besides brake, I hope. Well, according to a 2013 study in the journal Industry Prevention, nearly 1 in 3 people are distracted by their cell phones while in their cars, on foot, or crossing busy streets. Now, maybe you don't want to admit it, or maybe you don't even notice it, and that might be the point. It's important to speak about cultural norms because they so often go unspoken. On the way here from New York, I spoke with a great couple who were also from Brooklyn. They were sitting next to me at JFK. They'd been married for 40 years. They told me they'd met at Coney Island, on the F train heading toward Coney Island. That got me thinking about private parts in public spaces. Public spaces used to be the prerequisite to connection. You struck up conversations with strangers at bus stops, cafes, parks, train stations. But today, public spaces are the prerequisite to disconnect. What do we do in public spaces? We take out our phones and we take ourselves with them. So how do we fix all this? The answer is with medicine, sort of. In various moments of our history, societies develop what we call social antibodies, defenses against harmful sociological behaviors. Think about cigarette smoking. Smoking in public became taboo in just a few years after cultural norms changed. The remedy to public disconnection is in developing new norms that make it socially undesirable to disconnect in public. Well, what does language have to do with any of this? Language is more than just words. Language is an act. Language is a discourse. Language dictates those cultural norms, rules, and social scripts we willingly or unwittingly perform. You know, when I was invited to participate in this TED event, I told everyone I knew or didn't know on Facebook, Twitter, and of course in the physical world. Pretty much everyone had the same reply. They liked me, they poked me, they patted me on the back, and then they asked, but what the heck is a liminal space? Liminal means to be on the periphery, to be on the edge, to exist in the boundaries between several different things, and always on the verge of becoming. It means being fluid, which according to a Pew study, the majority of millennials identify as their prevailing cultural norm. Every generation has their defining idea. For Generation X, it was diversity. For baby boomers, it was individuality. For the silent generation, it was duty. I think I've been liminal long before I knew what the word meant. In 1985, I was born 2 months and 2 days premature. In 1985, under those circumstances, you had a 20% chance to live normally. Not to live, but to live normally. I didn't know any of this until I Googled it a few months ago, but anyway, it would take me many years to realize that normalcy wasn't something I should aspire to. That maybe not being normal was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And not just the circumstance, but who I was born to had as much of a stake in my liminal space, and who I would become, how I would get there. I was born to a Cuban father and a Polish mother, and I grew up with the intermingling of very different cultures and languages in my home. No one had ever heard of a blonde-haired Cuban with eyes that were more green than brown, at least not in suburban New Jersey. And when I graduated from college and became a reporter in the evening, I started working as a model and an actor. People looked at me and either scoffed or laughed. When I began to write and publish poetry and prose and started teaching at the City University of New York, Many people in my environment thought it was odd. I was at odds with limitations and with the labels that created them, and more than anything else, with the culture and the logic that allows them to perpetuate. Like many of you, it was difficult for me to identify myself with the various roles I performed. I could only see myself through a fusion of all the different roles that made me who I was, and I could only do that through writing, through language. And naturally, I experienced resistance. It was confusing for many of us in our idea of binaries. But what the liminal space makes clear is that binaries are outdated. They don't exist. We shattered them. The internet helped. We know that we act different in different situations. Our mannerisms change. The tone of our voice changes. The language we speak changes. The clothes we wear changes. Even our logic, our psychology changes. But for the first time in the history of the world, today we are able to cycle through our various selves at the same time. And we can thank technology for that. In previous years, we would have to compartmentalize the roles we play. They didn't coexist. They never interacted or intersected or informed one another. Today, we can play the role of student, daughter, girlfriend, photographer, and budding stock analyst simultaneously on our mobile devices. But the flip side to all of this freedom to explore all the beautiful roles that make us us is often how limiting our decisions can be. This is what I call our limited liabilities. And it has very little to do with business and a whole lot to do with minding our personal business, the way we lead our lives. You know, we are very critical of China for its censorship of the internet, but how often do we censor our own lives through the internet? It could be a conscious decision, as with the mute button on Twitter, which pretends accounts and users don't exist. Or it could be something deeper, more insidious, as with the algorithms Twitter and Facebook employ, and which only show us what we are calibrated to like on our news feeds. It's hard to develop a perspective when you are only getting the one someone else thinks you prefer. Former political consultant Cass Sunstein thinks the internet has only furthered our ideological differences, and that evidence is available to anyone who's bothered to tune in to our country's polarized and pathetic political debates. Likes become locks, and personalizing becomes profiling, driving individuals to ever more rigid and extreme positions. On Facebook, we like and share groups, people, and perspectives that we already identify with. It's great for community building, but horrible if you are in the line of questioning cultural norms, which we all need to be in the business of. Without questions, we can't create answers. Without a response, we can't create a dialogue. You give dating sites your city, your gender, your age, and who you think you're looking for, and it finds your new date after plugging in the very limiting data. Mushfake is a term that originated in prison culture. It refers to making do with something when the real thing is not available. When people can't find satisfaction in person, we turn to the virtual community of the internet. That's why in Korea, right now, the most popular program is called mukbang, which translates to eating broadcasts. At 8 p.m. every night, 45,000 Koreans watch another stranger eating dinner. These viewers are young, alone, hungry, and they eat right along with the stranger on the screen. Could it be that they are hungering for something more? Something real. How often do we curate a very limited existence for our real life because of our actions in the digital world? Online, you can always get what you want, but what you need, that's a much harder thing to find. And what's more, in a society with too many choices and too little time, our natural inclination is to ignore most of it. Click, scroll, scroll, click. Which brings me to the future, because we are all constantly projecting our futures with the same intensity by which we track our present footsteps. Here are some stats that you might find interesting. 1 in 5 people on Earth have no clean drinking water. Yet, 1 in 5 people on Earth own a smartphone. This isn't an estimate. This is taken from UNESCO's Institute for Statistics. The power to change our future depends on changing our present way of using those digital devices. And this is how we currently use those devices. 48 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute. 25% of people on Earth have a Facebook account. There will be more words written on Twitter in the next 2 years than contained in all the books ever printed. The internet has also equalized journalism, photography, philanthropy, music, filmmaking, and everything in between. It has opened the doors. It is the door to which we can become liminal. We created the internet, and now the internet is recreating us. Ever play telephone? Someone starts with a statement, right? And then the statement gets passed around until the last person in the chain receives the message and has to repeat it. The revelation is only that every message is subject to miscommunication. We've all been there. We're all there today. 28% of Twitter's 500 million tweets a day are retweets. People just passing along other people's thoughts. Our liminal self has been given the opportunity to flourish, but it will flounder in apathy, stagnancy, and imitation. We are at once the most informed generation in the history of the world and the least engaged. Studies at several universities have tracked our rise in narcissism and also shown a correlated decrease in empathy. One study, conducted by the University of Michigan, found that college students were 40% less empathetic than they were in 1979. And at the same time, the world's population is getting smarter, much smarter. IQ scores have risen significantly with each generation, not just in a few places, but in all countries in which IQ data was available. People are spending more and more time learning through liminal mediums, like the internet. And with increased access to multimedia comes increased possibilities of peer-to-peer learning, one person to another. And it's in that shared space where real dialogue begins. You're probably wondering why there's a video of birds flying behind me. This is a murmuration. We've all looked up in the evening and seen one. They're beautiful because all the starlings are united, collaborating, and creating something real. But it only takes a single bird making the slightest shift in course to move the entire flock. So as we question our cultural norms and rules and the social scripts we follow or reevaluate because of them, I want us to dare to be liminal, dare to shift gears, dare to ask questions. Start by asking yourself one today. Where do I want to go now? Who do I want to become? Thank you.